Tapped it on to Stewart, on to Tony Shaw. Tony Shaw on to Dacos. Hunter coming in. Dacos fires. It's curving. Great goal.
Good old Collingwood forever. We know how to play the game. Side by side we stick together to uphold the Magpies' name. Hear the barrackers are shouting, as all barrackers should. There is just one team we favour, and that's good old Collingwood. There's no team we'd rather see winning, and there's no team that likes winning more. When it's all said and done and the premiership's won, it's Collingwood forevermore. And good old Collingwood forever. We know how to play the game. Side by side we stick together to uphold the Magpies' name. Hear the barrackers are shouting, as all barrackers should. There is just one team we favour, and that's good old Collingwood. There is just one team we favour, and that's good old Collingwood. Good old Collingwood.
Most clubs are happy to boast one champion full forward in their history. Collingwood has had stacks. Would you believe that a Magpie topped the goal-kicking ladder 22 times during the first 43 years of the league? Dickie Lee was probably the greatest of them all. He was football's most celebrated high flyer in his day. That is from 1906 to 1922. Just look at all the medals and trophies he won. In fact, the cheer up there, Kazali, only came about when Lee was near retirement. After Lee came the fabulous Gordon Coventry. Old Nuts, as he was affectionately called, was the Don Bradman of football. And how about this? He played in a record 31 final matches and kicked a remarkable 1,299 goals between 1920 and 1937. No player will ever top that total, I'd reckon. One day in 1929, Gordon Coventry kicked 16 goals. The next season he went one better, kicking 17 goals in a game. A famous Collingwood supporter and patron, John Wren, rewarded Nuts with 50 quid each time, and that was a lot of money in those days. Well, there's no doubt about it, John Wren loved goal kickers. I can recall playing out at North Melbourne, that's on their home ground at Arden Street, and I'd kicked 7 goals this day. As a matter of fact, I had a bad day. Went into the dressing room and John Wren was standing there with Jock McCarley, who was our coach, and I walked past him to go to the shower. I didn't do anything about it. So I finished up having 16 showers, and on the 16th shower I was walking past John Wren, and he finally shook hands with me. I felt something crispy going to my hand, and when I got back to my locker, which is actually a nail in the wall at North Melbourne, I found I was well rewarded. In modern times, Peter McKenna has been Collingwood's outstanding full forward. There's no doubt about that.
I'll tell you what Collingwood means to me. 11 years of tremendous excitement, great loyalty of the supporters, tremendous players I've played with. Who could forget the Richardson brothers, Barry Price in the centre, great ruckman Len Thompson, and of course the great courage of Des Tuddenham and Ted Potter playing at centre half back. Also the coaches I played under, Neil Mann, and of course the great Bobby Rose himself. Of course people talk about tradition. Modern people say forget about tradition. I say baloney to that. I think tradition is most important, particularly in this great club, the greatest club of all.
There's a bit of an argument about it, about where our club was actually formed. But one thing's certain, after the Collingwood Football Club deposed the Britannias in 1892, its first committee meetings were held here, at the Grace Darling Hotel, because we didn't have a grandstand yet at Victoria Park. Our first year in the VFA didn't exactly set the football world on fire. In fact, we entered the bottom of the ladder, which didn't happen again until 1976. But at least we were off and running. The team gradually improved once the club started paying the players, and by our 5th season, Collingwood won a premiership. A year later, we helped form the VFL. And believe you me, they couldn't have done it without us. Really, the league has always needed Collingwood because every football follower either loves them or they hate them.
So go out and win, Collingwood. There's no team we'd rather see winning, and there's no team that likes winning more.
Well, I'll tell you something about the stab kick. I don't know whether you know it or not, but Collingwood invented it. It revolutionised football right back in 1902, changed the whole pattern of the game. It enabled the Magpies to win back-to-back flags in 1902 and 3. And the man who thought of it, one of our finest players ever, was Dick Condon. Condon had been disqualified for life by the league in 1900. But fortunately for Collingwood, he got a reprieve after 18 months. Condon's close mate, Charlie Panham Sr., my grandfather, helped him develop the stab pass. Charlie's son, Albie, who was the most elusive player I've ever seen, can tell us about it.
We used to find in our day that it was a great value. And for those information about it is that when you do a stab pass is when you're at a fairly good pace and you're coming down the ground and you see your fellow comrade, you give it with a slap bang pass, and which alternated into a drop punt after that.
In the first 25 years of the league, Collingwood won 5 flags, finished up runner-up 7 times, and only missed out on the finals once. But Collingwood's run was just beginning, as recalled by Bruce Andrew.
They were champions in their own right, but not one of them thought he was better than anybody else because he was just a cog in the Magpie machine. And that was the spirit of Collingwood then. They were a united group. In fact, as I recall and I look around this ground and I see the Sharon stand, and remember that our old grandstand was about 1/5 the size of the current Sharon stand, and in our dressing room, we call it the dressing room or training room, we had one bath, we had one shower, and you know, come off the ground covered with mud, and there'd be 3 of us could fit into this bath. One would sit each end, the other fellow would stand up in the middle, and believe me, that was the closeness that made that Collingwood side the great machine. I'm referring to that because we did believe in it. The spirit was fantastic. Everybody worked together, and they were mates.
The Collingwood spirit was personified by Harry Collier. He and his brother Albert, better known as Leader, each played in 6 Collingwood premierships. And if you wanted Harry to eat a Collingwood Guernsey, he didn't need pepper and salt.
They talk about eating a Collingwood Guernsey. I think in our times the kids would all eat a Guernsey just to be a black and white player. Well, to beat Collingwood, I was born on that side of the ground, went to school this part, and there's the ground in the middle. Who wouldn't want to play with Collingwood? Who wouldn't want to be black and white? Well, that's the way we were. Most of the kids at the school here, when we left the school ground, we'd be over at the training. And that was one of the parts of the things I think that helped to make my brother and myself Collingwood footballers.
Another reason for Collingwood's success was leadership. Sid Coventry was one of the club's greatest leaders. He holds the unique distinction of captaining Collingwood to 4 flags in a row.
Uphold the Magpie's name. Hear the barrackers are shouting, as all barrackers should. There is just one team we favour, and that's good old.
Our oldest player from that era, Jiggy Harris, recalls the importance of Coventry.
But I give Coventry the top marks for the way he led the side and also the love of club that he instilled into the players.
After Coventry captained Collingwood for 8 years, Harry Collier took over for the next 5. The Magpies made the grand final all 5 times and won 2 flags.
In 1935 and 6 were 2 of our great years. As in these 2 games, we knocked South off in each of them. They were the favourites really in the games, but the 35 one, that was the year that Bob Pratt I lighted off a tram and run into a car, and I thought myself that made the difference in Collingwood beating South in that 35 grand final. Bob Pratt wasn't able to play, which that was all right for Collingwood, but bad luck for South. The 36-1, after a hard-fought game, all through the day, the ball end to end, we finished up, I think, winning by about 10 points. And that was, I suppose you'd have to say, that was my greatest thrill, because I was captain of both of those 35-6 sides.
Another player who was thrilled by the 1935-36 premierships was Keith Stackpole.
The old coach Jock McHale, he was sitting next to me and he's going crook, and then all of a sudden he'd say, "Is it through yet, through the goals?" You know, and he never used to look, well, I was 19th man anyhow. He'd say to me, "Is it through yet, through yet?" And I said, "Yes, he's right, Jock." Well, he said, "Well, when you get on the ground," he said, "hang around that full forward line with Gordon Coventry and Ron Hildison." He said, "He'll punch it out to you." So anyhow, I went on the ground, and I didn't see a thing then until I ran into Gordon Coventry, and he tapped me on the shoulder. He says, "You're right, Stack." He said, "Stay here." And anyhow, I stayed there, and not long after, Hillis hit the ball out right into my hands, and I kicked the goal and put us about 11 points in front. I said, well, the great experiences I've had at Collingwood.
There's no doubt Collingwood had the king of coaches in Jock McHale. The club meant everything to old Jock. He would run through a brick wall for Collingwood. And of course, he expected the men he coached to do the same. Jock played for the Maggies for 17 years and coached them for 38. 38 years, can you imagine that? No wonder he was involved in 11 of the club's 13 premierships, either as a player, coach or selector. His son, young Jock, who's a lot older than I am, of course, played for Collingwood during the war and later served on the committee in the true McHale tradition.
Well, the Collingwood Club was a very, very important part of my father's life. I'm often reminded about his three great loves, his family, the Collingwood Football Club and the Carlton United Brewery. Not only did he work at the Carlton United Brewery, but it was the place that he obtained jobs for the Collingwood players, and many a great player of Collingwood worked with my father at the brewery. The Collingwood Club, I suppose, he spent, I don't know, a great number of years, something like 50-odd years or more, and playing for about approximately 15 or 17 years and coaching for quite a number of years. You could imagine what Collingwood meant to him.
Jock hated to lose, and his attitude was contagious.
If ever a man was able to unite players and to assess the value of players, then that man was Jock McHale. He was really the spirit of the Collingwood team. I spoke earlier about the mateship. Now, Jock didn't go around looking for mates, but he created them. He created them amongst the players because that was the attitude that he revelled in, that you are one, you are all one. As a matter of fact, even in the matter of payment, he didn't want any more pay than the players. He was just that type of fellow. So he was a tremendous influence on the spirit of those chaps and also on the character, in building the character of the players of that era. Jock McHale's name must go down as part of Collingwood Football Club's history.
We used to sort of know Jock, know his way, sort of learned his speeches, but by Jesus, when he used to talk to us, you could feel your old belly turning over because he seemed to instir something into you which helped Collingwood to be so successful.
Loyalty was the Collingwood credo, and the club's mystique has always affected the players.
Like myself, after you pull that Collingwood jumper on they all come back to Collingwood. There's great champions that played with other teams, and they all come back and join the Past Players Association, which I've been the president for the last 20 years.
Every Magpie supporter knows we won a lot of premierships because Collingwood was pretty good on the field. We weren't bad off the field either, let me tell you that. We were the first club to gain control of our own ground from the cricket club. Some clubs are still brawling over that one, and so is the league. But at Victoria Park, football was the #1 priority. It was damn near sacred.
There was no future in Victoria Park unless the committee of the Collingwood Football Club had control of its own destiny. And the destiny was to get control of the ground. And that was a very traumatic period because we were interested in our cricket club, we were interested in our baseball club, but we had to have control of the ground. You know, when we as players came out to play on this ground, we were given a ticket to gain admittance to the ground to play for Collingwood, and it was issued by the secretary of the Collingwood Cricket Club. Now, you know, the whole thing was wrong. And the Collingwood Club was the first to visualise the future of football at Victoria Park. And so we started our campaign, and it meant moving the cricket club away from that control. Now that meant a lot of battles with the Collingwood Council. You know, we regret a lot of the things that were said at that period, but on the other hand, we had a cause, and our cause was the Collingwood Football Club. Our cause was the future of football at Victoria Park. Our cause was to see that football had justice, and to have justice it had to have control. So the issue was fought, and it was fought on occasions rather bitterly, which many of us regretted, but it had to be done.
I know we take it for granted now, but Collingwood was the first league club to obtain a liquor licence. It was quite a battle too, and we needed help from Jack Galvally, Sugar Roberts, and our great patron John Wren. We got our liquor permit by making sure the German club's licence was withdrawn when World War II broke out. Then we cleverly stepped in and took it over. It was like a licence to print money. The social club boomed, and in 1959 we built the most modern club rooms in league football. Not bad for a working man's club, eh? Our success on the field in the 50s also helped to build these magnificent club rooms, and the grandstands too. And I was proud to captain the Collingwood side that won the flag in 1953. But I'll let my old mate Bob Rose tell you all about it.
When we won the second semi-final, we were a fairly confident side because although we were described as being a tough, give at all costs type of team, we still had tremendous skills in our side. We centred victory at three-quarter time. We were very confident and we had a handy lead, but Geelong came back in that last quarter with true courage, and for a while there it was pretty touch and go. But we hung on, and the celebrations, of course, after waiting for so many years to have a victory, was just unbelievable.
Listen to the voice of old Jock McHale announcing John Wren's gift to the players after our 1953 victory.
Mr. Wren started to come down and tell me, personally, to give the players £500.
Sadly to say, both men died shortly after the grand final, partly from the shock of our first flag in 17 years. 5 years later, Collingwood won its 13th and most spectacular premiership. One of its outstanding players that season was the mighty Midget.
In 1958, it was a pleasure to win the Copeland Trophy. I beat Harry Sullivan that year, and they announced it at the club here in the old social rooms, and I wasn't even in attendance when it was announced. These days, they have a big social event, of course, but of course, we were only getting £12 a week those days. Well, 1958 was so crucial to Collingwood because Melbourne had won 3 premierships in a row. They'd won 55, 56, they'd beaten us. They'd beaten Hawthorn in 57, and they were coming up to beat us for the 4th time, to win their 4th grand final in a row, and that really would have stolen one of Collingwood's prize records, the fact that they are the only club in VFL history that have won 4 premierships in a row. And, of course, the whole build-up of that particular week from the supporters was one of, you can't let those toffs beat we Collingwood boys, the industrial boys, and that was a real feeling that came from the supporters. It never once was uttered by the committee, who were men of great integrity. Sid Coventry was our president in those periods, and Fons Kine, of course, our coach. They would have never tolerated that sort of talk, but from the players' point of view, we went out full of pride and full of encouragement from all our supporters to knock off the Toffs down at Melbourne.
The players responded to the challenge of tradition in the 1958 grand final. At quarter time, the Maggies were down by 17 points, and they looked to be in plenty of trouble. But that's when they started to use a little muscle. When Melbourne retaliated by playing the man instead of the ball, Collingwood achieved one of the greatest upsets in league history, and we held on to our record of 4 flags in a row.
Boy, in 1958 we were really rank outsiders because Melbourne had beaten us in the second semi-final by something like 10 to 12 goals. We'd planned what every man should do, and to get beaten by 10 goals was shattering. So we relied entirely on Fons Kine's address prior to the game, and a great address it was too. Some of the words are still ringing in my ear, and he just lifted us man to man, and Melbourne was so much bigger in every position. They were so much stronger, they hit harder, they seemed to kick the ball further, but it's surprising what can be done if a team together and play as a champion team rather than a team of champions. It's surprising what results you can have, and that feeling of victory over Melbourne to me is something that'll live forever.
Although Collingwood hasn't won a flag since 1958, it's not for the lack of being there. Our loss in 1964 seems typical of Collingwood's misfortune. If ever a captain deserved to lead the Magpies to a premiership, it was Ray Gablick.
1964 was a great year. It's a year I'll always remember. For many reasons, mainly, firstly, I was my first year as captain of the side, and we managed, after a very poor season in 63, to make the finals, and then to play in the grand final. And with the coming into the final, the last few minutes of the game, about 10 minutes before the famous run that we're about to talk about, I'd just kicked a goal from the forward pocket, a boundary throw in, and that put us in within a few points of Melbourne, who had been leading all day. And then we went back to the centre, and the ball came out across the centre, and Tubman passed the ball across to me on the wing, and for some unknown reason, the whole sides were both up into the centre play of the field. So away I went. There's no one about me, so away I went, bouncing my ball merrily, plenty of pace, and the only thing I did wrong, I didn't go back and kick another goal after that. Now, I knew then that we had a good chance of winning the flag in that year because the police came out, but things didn't work out our way and we lost the flag. So although it was a great game and I was happy to lead the side, it was disappointing to lose by 4 points.
Well, it does something to you, this ground, doesn't it? And I'll tell you what, it's a great stadium to play a grand final in. I've played in a few here, and as for Collingwood, well, we've played in more grand finals than anybody else. We've had some great victories, no doubting that, but boy, have there been some disasters. None greater than in 1970.
Muscled by Collingwood's blistering pace, Carlton's defence is ragged. Tearing through a pack in characteristic style, Tottenham snaps the first goal after 5 minutes. Cleverly positioning himself, McKenna beats Hall. The mark is paid, and Collingwood's record-breaking goal kicker is right on target for his first of the match.
And we thought we had the flag in the bag, but then we came unstuck. It's a day the coach will never forget.
It has been suggested that I've been the unluckiest coach at Collingwood. I suppose in terms of losing grand finals by very small margins, that could be correct.
Gallagher breaks away. With players going in hard, Clifton beats Thornley to the ball to turn back the Blues and send Collingwood into attack. Grabbing the ball at top speed, Dunn swings away to kick a left footer on the run. It's a beauty, straight through the centre. It's all Collingwood now, and again they threaten danger. McKenna kicks another goal, taking the Magpies to a 44-point lead.
I believe that we were the best team in the league. At half-time, we certainly hadn't capitalised on all the play. Although we were 8 goals in front, I believe that we should have been even more. And, of course, we had a couple of disastrous injuries just before half-time when Tuddenham and McKenna collided. That didn't help us. Still, we couldn't look for excuse.
Bob Hurdon to replace Greening, who's affected by severe cramps. Needing a goal to regain the lead, Collingwood pulls out all stops in the time-on period. But Silvani turns them back. Jesselenko dashes in to kick to the unguarded goal.
When you're 7 or 8 goals in front in the grand final at half-time, that should be enough to win. We blew it, and that is the saddest game of my life.
Today completes an unenviable hat-trick of grand final losses for Bob Rose over a 7-year period.
One of Collingwood's most durable players from that tragic era of the 1960s and 70s was Wayne Richardson. He and his brother Max both captained Collingwood.
I consider myself one of the fortunate ones to have played in 4 grand finals, and unfortunately, I suppose, on the other hand, we didn't win one. But I can say that I played in one that we didn't lose when we drew that one in 77. The first grand final in 77 was a fantastic game and one of the best games that I've ever played in.
Casson gets it on his head. Kink steals it. Gets it out to Shaw. Shaw has Max Richardson clear in the centre, but goes for goal. And he's put it through for another one for the Magpies, and away they go. Out of trouble, quickly into the arms of Magro. Magro drives him forward, finds Kink, who's a loose man. There's no one in 15, 20 metres. He knows it. He heads towards goal, puts it through. And the Magpies are really savage at the moment. That's his second goal.
But we were 27 points up at three-quarter time, and probably I thought had the biggest opportunity for Collingwood to win a premiership since 1958.
They desperately need a goal. They're just withering away at the moment. Bowles kicks it towards full forward. Great mark in front of the pack by Worthington. That was a strong mark.
Well, Worthington's got a lot of room to direct that ball to, and Ray Shaw's standing over there alone. He goes right down through centre wing to Barham. Great mark, Barham. Open goal. What spectacular football. Barham's kick for goal. And Collingwood's 9th. Sensational football by Ricky Barham.
And North Melbourne were level with us, and then they got in front of us. And fortunately, our big mate Ross Dunn took that mark in the goal square and kicked truly to force a tie.
Saying, Di, what a match it's been, particularly this last quarter. Into the goal square. Big pack of players. The Collingwood mark. Thompson. No, Dunn. There's hope written all over their face. Fingers, legs, eyes, arms, everything crossed in the Collingwood box as Dunn comes in. Drives it through for a goal. And it's a tie. Ross Dunn's first major. And we've got a tied-up ball game.
The following Saturday, we came out, we were sort of a little bit flat. I think we'd trained very hard that particular week.
Blight there too. Punched by Keenan. Max Richardson tries to get it. Bridus again. Trying to pick it up. He does. Perry, the dribbler. To Barham. Barham scoots away with it. Looking for Dunn. Gumberland right on his hammer. Gets to Dunn with a bounce. Dunn feeds it back inboard to Bond. What a star he's been. There he goes. Still bouncing. Hooks it in towards Peter Moore. And Moore marks. He should drift around quietly, he does. He's kicked a goal. Super Blight today.
chipped out there quickly by Gordon across to Manasseh, who's played much better this week on the forward line, and Ruckrover going to look at him go, tucks it up under his sleeve. He's mind's intent on kicking a goal. He ducks around, a good swerve by Manasseh, and it's a goal! Yes! What a goal! Fantastic Phil. That would be the best goal of the match. He started off from the back line, crashed his way through, sold everything to them. A fantastic effort.
Our older players, we tied, there's no doubt about that we tied, and in the last quarter it was just a formality. Even though the margin wasn't great, it was just North Melbourne had played too well on that particular day, even though I thought that during the year we were probably equal to any side in the competition in 77.
Hafey's heroes appeared in 5 grand finals here between 1977 and 1981, but they still couldn't win the flag that has eluded Collingwood for the past 27 years now. And of course the most recent heartbreak occurred 4 years ago when Peter Moore was captain.
Here's Gordon again for Collingwood. To Shaw. Shaw sells the dummy and away he goes. Down in the Moore direction. Moore again!
The question in everyone's mind during the grand final week, 1981, was whether Peter Moore was fit to lead the team against Carlton.
A bit clumsy, in goes Moore, who is not moving freely at all. Taken away by Sheldon. Moore can't run. But Collingwood are in a fair amount of trouble with injuries. Peter Moore really hobbling.
There was, you know, a lot of bitterness after that loss, and a lot of division developed in the club as a result of it. But for me personally, it was probably my most disappointing occurrence in football. I tore a hamstring in the game against Fitzroy a few weeks before that game, and I spent I think 12 days in intensive physio, 6 hours a day to try and get fit to play in the grand final, and so I was going into it with a fairly severe handicap, and decided with coach Tommy Hafey and the other selectors that I would play, and I had to take responsibility for that decision to play, and it was a very poor performance from me personally in that game, and you know, I don't remember it fondly, although it was a great performance, I think, by the team, even though that team didn't win.
It's Sheldon who's just on. Dacos on to Picken. And towards Rayshaw. Moore says leave it, off his chest. Perovic, grabbed by Moore. Rayshaw puts his head down. Moore tries to trap it. Hunter a little half-distance kick to Sheldon. Good tackle under pressure. Barham comes through, taps it on to Stewart, on to Tony Shaw. Tony Shaw on to Dacos. Hunter coming in, Dacos fires, it's curving. Great goal! Great teamwork by Collingwood, capped off by a fine left-foot goal.
You know, Collingwood is always something special, and it's something special to me. Any player that plays for Collingwood and that's their first club, always a part of your heart is always a Collingwood player, and it was a great personal tragedy when I made the decision to leave, and it was something that I regret, because Collingwood is such a fantastic institution in league football and in football in Australia for that matter. It's the most powerful club, it's the most emotionally bound up club, in the sense that people either love the club or hate it, and the people that do support the club you know, are almost pathological in their love for the club and the desire to see the club succeed.
Gets his pace away from Malin, runs into half forward, down towards Peter Moore this time. The big fella goes up. Williams off the packer snap, a goal! Collingwood's first after 6 minutes of play.
Forward, Dacos and Hunter. English the spoil. Down to Kink in front. Barham offers the lead. Good football, Ricky Barham. Pops it over the head of Dool. Moore one-on-one, but it's over their heads for a goal by Ricky Barham.
One thing that highlights our great tradition is the way the Guernsey's been handed down throughout the generation. My grandfather, Charlie Panham Sr., captained Collingwood, so did my Uncle Albie, and I was the 3rd generation of my family to captain the Magpies. No other league club has even had a father and son captain their side, much less a father, son and grandson. The Toomeys are another family that has spanned 3 generations at Collingwood. Bill Jr. had enormous talent, and he was a chip off the old block for sure.
Back in 1918, the Toomey name started at Collingwood. Bill Toomey Sr., as he was to become known as, started on the wing here on the Victoria Park Oval. He came from Heidelberg. I think a couple of guys just went out one day and said, listen, you've got a pair of football boots, we'd like you to come down and have a run at Collingwood. My father, he was also a great runner in those days, as He went on to win a store gift in 1924, and he was ran second in 1919. So the 5 or 6 years he was here at Collingwood, he was a very fast type of footballer, but he probably became a little bit unpopular with the coach of the day in those days, Jock McHale, because he left when he was at 22 years of age, probably right at the pinnacle of setting off on a great career. He went to Stawell and played at Stawell. He married a girl up there, Rose Lovett, and she bore 4 sons, and 3 of them are to play here at Collingwood. So I guess that's where the Toomey tradition came, that 3 sons actually followed on in their father's footsteps. Then, of course, 1953, the great thrill was that we all played in the 1953 Collingwood Premiership together. We've got another Toomey now, the 5th Toomey. His name's David. You'd probably know him probably just as much as you know us.
We've had heaps of fathers and sons playing for Collingwood, 25 sets of them, in fact. What's more, we've had 40 sets of brothers. That's right, 40 sets of brothers. Sometimes as many as 4 of them, like the Roses, and the latest, well, the Shaw brothers. Ray captained Collingwood in 1979 and 1980. Tony won the Copeland Trophy in 1984. And Neville is just starting to make his mark as a nuggety utility player.
Since I started my career at Collingwood, the word tradition has been bandied around a lot. One tradition is the Collingwood players, brothers who have played for Collingwood. I've played with Ray, my older brother, and at the moment Neville plays for Collingwood. I think tradition nowadays with the selling and buying of so many players from different clubs has taken a bit of beating over the years, but since I came to Collingwood, there's one thing that's always stood out in my mind, and that was just the jumper.
Collingwood barrackers are not content to rest on past laurels. The only thing that really matters is when the next premiership will be won.
One of the more frequent questions you get from Collingwood supporters, what does it take to win a flag, and when will the next one be? I've played in 2 losing grand final sides, which I've not really wrapped in. I think you have to have a definite hate for losing. I think at the moment we haven't got that at the club, and I've always been one who, whatever sport I tried to play, I really hated losing. Even if it was a relaxing sport, I still hated losing. I think if you have that in the 20 players on the day, that's what wins grand finals.
Good old Collingwood forever. We know how to
From the outer flank, Wayne Richardson shot as high as a 50-yard goal.
Just over 65 metres out from goal. A high one looking for double back. Second listening back to Texas. Picken's 13th kick. The centre half forward. Not much marking power there for Collingwood. Kick to the side. Gave away a free kick. Oh, he should be penalised. Barham, goal! Unbelievable umpiring. Second goal.
When it's all said and done, and the Premier Ship's won, it's Collingwood and Taylor. Taylor lines up and snaps. Good old Collingwood forever. We know how to play the game. Side by side we stick together to uphold the Magpie's name. Here the barrackers are shouting, as all barrackers should. There is just one team we favour, and that's good old Collingwood. Good old Collingwood forever. We know how to play the game. Side by side we stick together to uphold the Magpie's name. Here the barrackers are shouting, as all barrackers should. There is just one team we favour, and that's good old Collingwood. There is just one team we favour, and that's good old Collingwood.
Dedication has always been a key ingredient in Collingwood's success story, and is needed again.
No height there for Carlton, and McCormack takes the mark for Collingwood.
Out it goes wide to McEwen.
McEwen punches and follows on brilliantly. Well played, young man. Picks it up nicely on the half-back flank. He goes again, and that was brilliant football.
Ralph leads with McCormack, long way from goal. McCormack, well played. Brilliant football, Peter McCormack. A full forward, turn full back. Oh, Meldrum's hand pass to Phillips. Now it's open for Collingwood. Wide in the open is Brown. Short pass is good. Nest of Collingwood players. Chance for Neville Shaw. Pops it out for Richardson. Open goal for Richardson. The Magpies back in front.
Banks fights well. Turns and twists and left puts it to Gary Shaw. Gary Shaw will give it across. And it's a great pass.
Chance for Fellows. Goes to the front. Dacos. Beauty.
Derek Shaw punched out wide, and here comes Mullane. He beats McConville, steadies and sends him into attack again as the dangerous Dacos. In front, here comes Richardson, left foot snap for goal, beats Reed, left foot snap this time. They're the two danger. And he's coming in for his 12th kick from the angle. Beautiful. Oh, what a magnificent kick. And Michael Richardson is really loving it. Foster Light, look out, you're in trouble. Oh, brilliant interception. Mullane will kick a goal. That was beautiful. And he does it.
Away from Edwards, which doesn't necessarily indicate Banks!
As the great Fons Kane once said, today I want you to bleed for Collingwood.